The search for happiness, what the sages taught. What does it mean to be happy? Not happiness is a fleeting emotion, but is a core experience, something that is deep enough to remain foundational even as daily disappointments and frustrations affect us during our busy lives. Wisdom teachers down the ages have all talked about the search for happiness, the elusive goal. This video contains the thoughts of some of these great teachers on the subject of happiness, and where and how to find it for ourselves. The Buddha centered his teachings around the attainment of true happiness. American Buddhist teacher Joseph Goldstein says, "It is said that after his enlightenment, the Buddha was motivated to teach by seeing that all beings were seeking happiness, yet out of ignorance were doing the very things that brought them suffering. This aroused his great compassion to point the way to freedom." For more than 3 decades, scholar and contemplative B. Alan Wallace has considered the perennial question, what is happiness, from the dual perspectives of modern science and traditional Buddhist meditation practice. He said, "True happiness is the fruit not of worldly trappings and ambitions, but of a focused mind and an open heart." When speaking of happiness, I prefer the term human flourishing. Flourishing is a sense of happiness that's beyond the momentary vicissitudes of our emotional state. An interviewer asked, "And what would that happiness entail?" He answered, "A meaningful life." The interviewer asked, "What makes for a meaningful life?" He answered, "I consider each day not just the life as a whole. I look at 4 ingredients. First, was it a day of virtue? I'm talking about basic Buddhist ethics, avoiding harmful behavior of body, speech, and mind, devoting ourselves to wholesome behavior and to qualities like awareness and compassion. Second, I'd like to feel happy rather than miserable. The realized beings I've known exemplify extraordinary states of well-being, and it shows in their demeanor, their way of dealing with adversity, with life, with other people. And third, pursuit of the truth, seeking to understand the nature of life, of reality, of interpersonal relationships, or the nature of mind. But you could do all that sitting quietly in a room. None of us exists in isolation, however, so there's a 4th ingredient. A meaningful life must also answer the question, what have I brought to the world? If I can look at a day and see that virtue, happiness, truth, and living an altruistic life are prominent elements, I can say, you know, I'm a happy camper. Pursuing happiness does not depend on my checkbook or the behavior of my spouse or my job or my salary. I can live a meaningful life even if I only have 10 minutes left. Turning to the Christian tradition, we look at the wisdom teachings of Jesus. He speaks of happiness often, especially in the Gospel of Thomas, a lesser-known gospel text that is thought to have been one of the earliest written accounts of Jesus' words. Gospel of Thomas scholar and author Hugh McGregor Ross says that Jesus talks a lot about happiness. He said, "What it must imply is that as Jesus and his disciples traveled around during his ministry, this must have been a frequently recurring theme. When the teachings in the Gospel of Thomas are truly mastered, it will be found that the source of this real happiness lies within us. It does not come from anything outside. It does not have to be given us. It does not have to be made. We don't have to make it, we only need to become aware of it. In the parable of the hidden treasure, Jesus teaches his followers about the source of true happiness. This is in Logion 109. Yeshua, Jesus says, "The divine realm is like a man who owned a field with treasure hidden away in it. Unaware of it, he died, leaving it to his son, who also knew nothing about it. After taking possession of the land, the son practically gave it away for nothing. But the one who bought it began plowing and discovered the treasure, and immediately started lending money at interest to whomever he pleased." There's a shorter variation on this passage in Matthew 13, verse 44. "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had and bought that field." What does this parable teach us about where to look for peace and happiness? Jean-Yves Leloup, who's written extensively about the wisdom teachings of Jesus, has written, "This parable illustrates that most people have no inkling of the treasure that's hidden within them." The Katha Upanishad says, "The self, which is embedded in the heart of every creature, is smaller than the infinitely small and more luminous than the infinitely great." We overlook the presence of this treasure. Even those who claim to be disciples of the Christ are ignorant of this heritage. The one who discovers it is the passerby, the stranger, who patiently works his field. In another Logion in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus talked about the treasure, which is gaining inner knowledge. He said, "Only when you have come to know your true self will you be fully known." That's in Logion 3 of the Gospel of Thomas. Elsewhere, Jesus refers to this self-knowledge as the attainment of the kingdom of God. The Indian scriptures, the Upanishads, also refer to the treasure within as the self. According to these teachings, that transcendental awareness is our true identity. So let's take a closer look at the wisdom teachings of one of the great Indian sages. RamanaMaharshi is recognized throughout the world as a great wisdom teacher and self-realized being. He's also considered one of the great teachers of Advaita, non-dual philosophy, in the 20th century. He taught that happiness comes from living in oneness, in unity with our authentic self, which constitutes the ultimate reality. He wrote, "The ever-present self-awareness, the radiant gem, this is the rarest, richest treasure. Look within and find and hold it fast." He wrote, "You do not acquire happiness. Your nature is happiness. Our real nature is liberation, but we imagine we are bound. Gaze at your own real nature. It doesn't matter if your eyes are open or if they're closed. Everywhere there is only the one." The method of self-inquiry is to turn the outward-going mind back to its source, the heart. The pure silence that then shines forth is the goal of knowledge. The great ones who have found the clue and traced and gained it enjoy eternal bliss. He also said, all human beings want happiness untainted with sorrow. They want to grasp a happiness that will not come to an end. They're always trying to attain happiness through one means or another. A person's real nature is happiness. Happiness is inborn in the true self. The search for happiness is an unconscious search for our own true self. The self is imperishable. Therefore, when a person finds it, they find a happiness which does not come to an end. Turning to the Middle East, we look at Sheikh Nasserdeen, a popular fictional character in Islamic folktales. He's an unusual sort of wisdom teacher, notorious for his foolishness and stupidity. Here's a story which points out that we invariably look for happiness in the wrong place, in the dizzying array of shiny objects that make up our outer world, instead of seeking it where it actually exists, within ourselves. A man is walking home late one night when he sees an anxious Mullah Nasserdeen down on all fours, crawling on his hands and knees on the road, searching frantically under his streetlight for something on the ground. "Mullah, what have you lost?" the passerby asks. "I am searching for the key to my house," Nasserdeen says worriedly. "I'll help you look," the man says, and joins Mullah Nasserdeen in the search. Soon both men are down on their knees under the streetlight looking for the lost key. After some time, the man asks Nasserdeen, "Tell me, Mullah, do you remember exactly where you dropped the key?" Nasserdeen waves his arm back toward the darkness and says, "Over there, in my house. I lost the key inside my house." Shocked and exasperated, the passerby jumps up and shouts at Mullah Nasserdeen, "Then why are you searching for the key out here in the street?" "Because there's more light here than inside my house," Mullah Nasserdeen answers calmly. The storyteller would then ask their audience, "Aren't we all a bit like Sheikh Nasserdeen, looking outside for what lies within us, waiting to be discovered?" RamanaMaharshi used a similar analogy. He compared our confusion to a woman looking frantically for a lost necklace. She thinks she's misplaced. He said, "A woman with a necklace around her neck imagines it is lost, and after a long search elsewhere, touches her own neck and finds it there. Even so, self-awareness is here within. Seek for it within and find it." In the West, a mystic in medieval Christianity, Meister Eckhart, also said that the happiness we seek lies within. He wrote, "A human being has so many skins inside, covering the depths of the heart. We know so many things, but we don't know ourselves. 30 or 40 skins or hides, as thick and hard as an ox's or bear's, cover the soul. Go into your own ground and learn to know yourself there." Returning to the Islamic tradition, the sage Monoimus, the Arab, also taught that God, the ultimate reality, and the self are identical. He wrote, "Abandon the search for God and the creation and other matters of a similar sort. Look for him by taking yourself as the starting point. If you carefully investigate these matters, you will find him in yourself. Anandamayi Ma. Anandamayi Ma was born in North India and was recognized for her ecstatic state and saintly character from early childhood. She became widely known as she traveled throughout India during the mid-20th century. She talks about her experience of union with the One Reality. Inquire, who am I? And you will find the answer. Divine happiness, even the smallest grain of it, when found, never leaves one again. And when one attains to the essence of things and finds oneself, this is supreme happiness. When it is found, nothing else remains to be found. Do not be satisfied with fragmentary happiness, which is invariably interrupted by shocks and blows of fate, but become complete. And having attained to perfection, be yourself. Find out who you are. Nearer than the nearest, the very breath of life, the very core of every heart. In this video, we've taken a brief look at the sages and mystics in several spiritual traditions and how they talked about happiness. The Buddhist teacher quoted at the beginning stressed that a happy life is a life that is filled with meaning. A life of service to others is such a life, one that is meaningful and beneficial. The other mystics and sages quoted in this video all displayed this element of service to humanity, while they dwelt inwardly in an ecstatic state. Working to make the world a better place, then, is often part of the journey for persons on the spiritual path. The inner and the outer are one. From the perspective of non-dual awareness, life in all its forms embodies the highest reality. There is no distinction.